So in the third part of this week's class, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the national parks in the United Kingdom. So we'll move back to England, we'll talk about Wales, and we'll talk about Scotland a little bit, because some of them are situated there. And of course, during this semester we will talk a lot about tourism and what brings people to Britain as tourists, but there are some features of the British landscape and cultural geography as well that attract the citizens of Britain themselves, so some sort of national passions. And the national parks, the walking, sometimes even cross-country walking or hiking in the mountains, are definitely among the greatest national passions for the British. And if we look at the map of Great Britain with the national parks on it, you can see that there are quite a lot of them. Two in Scotland, as you can see, Cairngorms and Loch Lomond and Trossachs. Three in Wales, I already mentioned them, Snowdonia, Brecon Beacons and the Pembrokeshire coast, and the rest of them are in England. Quite a few in the north, three in the north, as you can see, Northumberland, the Lake District, or even four, Yorkshire Dales and North York Moors. So quite a lot in the north of England. One in the centre, Peak District in the Pennines, if you remember, the mountain range that goes along the spine of Britain. Quite a few in the south and west, so two in Cornwall, Exmoor and Dartmoor, and two in the south, New Forest and South Downs, plus one in East Anglia called the Broads. I'd like to talk with you a little bit about them and to show you some photographs and some smaller maps of these places. So the first two are the two national parks in Cornwall, called Dartmoor and Exmoor, as you can see here on this smaller map. And the photographs show you the kind of landscape that you can find there. It's mostly moors, as the name suggests, so heather covered hills with some marshland sometimes. Parts of these areas are quite tricky, and they actually have quicksand, so there were cases, historical and quite recent ones, of people actually being swallowed by the quicksands and never seen again. As you can remember from our discussion of the West and Cornwall, this is the place with a lot of Celtic presence, so you may find some standing stones and prehistoric monuments and early Christian monuments, the crosses, the ruins, the old churches. This is the place with quite a lot of mystery. Places with the legends and stories of quite spooky occurrences, ghosts and witches and criminals as well. But of course now they are some of the beautiful places to walk in Britain, and of course the pathways are safe. That's part of the idea of having national parks, that you have places of outstanding natural beauty with some pathways that the people use, rather than walking all over the place and destroying the natural surroundings. So that's one thing. In the south, we have two national parks, New Forest and South Downs. The Downs are kind of rolling hills near the coastal regions, as you can see here in the map. So the two parks are those green places near Salisbury, Southampton, and near the coastal region. One of the most spectacular places in the South Downs is this chalk coast called the Seven Sisters. Apparently there are 7 white cliffs, 7 chalk cliffs, as you can see here on the photograph. So it's not only Dover. This is quite far from Dover, as you can see. We can see the Isle of Wight here on the map, and Portsmouth and Southampton. So this is somewhere in the central area of the coast of England. New Forest is the place with woodland walks, and this was one of the places that were used for hunting by the royalty. So it was, I guess, it was deliberately maintained as a woodland, so that the kings and queens could have their hunting grounds. If we move to East Anglia, we encounter a rather unusual national park called the Broads. And the Broads are, as you can see, those marshy waterways in the east of England. And there was a lot of marshy areas and small rivers, and the whole idea of this national park is to preserve the wildlife, the water birds that live there, and the best way to experience this park for humans is actually to go by boat, or to rent a boat, or to have a boat trip. So this is, as you can see, the area connected to the coast, but not exactly on the coast. The coastal town would probably be Great Yarmouth, one of the popular Victorian holiday places, holiday towns, but otherwise we have those waterways, and basically what you do there is boating. However, most of the national parks in Britain are in the mountainous areas, so these are the places with mountain walks and hikes, sometimes with the lakes, sometimes with just pathways, and the first one here on my list is the Peak District in central England, so the most picturesque part of the Pennine Mountains. As you can see here on the map, it's somewhere between Manchester and Sheffield. So on both sides we have some heavily industrialized cities, but between them is this area with a lot of beautiful mountain and hill walks. So the place for those who enjoy walking in the mountains. Some other places, of course, the Lake District, which combines the lakes and the mountains. So there are mountain walks, and there is a lot of water-related activities. So the boats and the little tour boats. This place became fashionable in the 19th century. It is related with a lot of cultural activity. If you think of the landscape painters in the late 18th and early 19th century, so the Romantic period, if you think of the Romantic poets, especially Wordsworth, coming here and renting a house in the village of Grasmere, right in the center of the Lake District. This is the place that has become a very popular spot with tourists and the British alike. Never been there. This is again one of the places I would like to visit. I know the most interesting parts are, of course, the village of Grasmere, which we will return to when we talked about the literary geography of Britain. Also the town of Windermere and the town of Ullswater and the lake there. That's what you have, and you can basically walk from coast to coast. We will talk about it in a little moment, passing through 3 national parks basically relatively smoothly. So from the Lake District you can go to the 2 national parks located in Yorkshire, so the Yorkshire Dales and North York Moors. So once again the places of great natural beauty, the valleys of the Yorkshire Dales and the moorlands. So again, the hills of North York Moors, which look like this. The main town in the North York Moors would be Scarborough, which also gained a reputation of a fashionable holiday spot in the 19th century. As you can see, it's just north of the city of York, so it became quite popular. The last national park in England is furthest to the north. It is Northumberland National Park, with again some walks in the mountainous areas, as you can see here. But perhaps the most interesting part is the remains of Hadrian's Wall, which you can see on the photograph. It is situated in the south of the national park, and it combines the natural beauty with the historical interest. It's part of the UNESCO site as well. There we go. And if we move to Wales, we go back to Wales with the map showing the 3 national parks there. So Snowdonia and Brecon Beacons are the areas with the mountains and the lakes and mountain walks. In Snowdonia we have the peak called Snowdon, which is the highest peak in Wales and one of the highest peaks in Great Britain. Definitely the only higher ones are in Scotland. And in Pembrokeshire we have the picturesque coast. You can even see the pathways, walkways all around the western coast of Wales, so with a lot of beautiful natural features, as you can see here. but also some historical places of interest, perhaps the most spectacular one being the city and cathedral of St. David's. As you can see here at the very, very tip of Wales, western tip here, this is the cathedral, and the place where it's situated is the smallest city in the United Kingdom. If we move to Scotland, there are two national parks there. One is Cairngorms National Park in the Grampian Mountains, with again the lochs and the mountains. So for those who like the rugged natural landscape and mountain walks, this is one of the best places. And another national park in Scotland is Loch Lomond and the Trossachs. This is one of the places I visited. I actually was there. It was a very difficult hike, Ben Lomond, the peak near Loch Lomond. So if you forgive a little personal memory, this is where I met my husband. So, yep, on the banks of Loch Lomond, on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond, and he is there here filming me. Yeah. So this is what it looks like. The beautiful mountains and lakes. We'll talk about Scotland next week, so we'll return to those places, because now I'd like to show you a few more slides. One is a slide commemorating something quite interesting, the mass trespass in the place in southern England called Kinder Scout. This was a place, one of the places with quite a lot of natural beauty and natural walks. And the mass trespass was the idea that a few hundred of people basically walked into the private land, because before the 1950s, when the national parks were officially established by an act of parliament, much of the areas that are now national parks was in private hands, and the private landowners did not allow people to go there for recreation, for walking. So there were private guards and gamekeepers who did not allow people to trespass on private ground, but increasingly in the interwar period. So this famous incident happened on the 24th of April 1932, when a large group of people, mostly young people, some of them actually the sympathizers of the Communist Party, decided to trespass onto private land and use it as walking path for recreation, because they believed that the places of great natural beauty should belong to everybody, not to some private individual who owned the land. This was one of the incidents that led to the establishment of the national parks. So this is a 20th century idea, and basically a socialist idea, to allow people free access to recreation grounds. I mentioned the national passion for walking in the beautiful landscapes, and here we have a map with all those trails. Some of them are quite long distance routes, so you can just walk from one end of Great Britain to another over this system of nature walks and ancient trails, some of them going very, very far back in history, some of them connected to the national parks. This is something that many people in Britain find absolutely the basis of perfect holidays. Here we have the UK's top 7 long distance walks. So as you can see, one in Scotland, the southwest coast path in Cornwall, one just across Wales from Bristol to Liverpool, following the early medieval border line between England, not really England, the Kingdom of Mercia and Wales, called Offa's Dyke Path. Offa was one of the early medieval kings of Mercia, and he decided to build these walls, basically earth walls, like a ditch, to protect his border from the Welsh kingdoms. We have the Ridgeway, which is a very interesting place, which used to be a Celtic trail through central England. We have the South Downs Way along the coast, including those 7 sisters, and we have two interesting pathways: the Pennin Way along the mountain range of the Pennines, and Wainsworth coast to coast. And this is something quite interesting. This was the pathway initiated or imagined by a great enthusiast of cross-country walking, Alfred Wainwright. As you can see, he was a very avid outdoorsman, and also he wrote many guidebooks to the natural areas, the natural, beautiful areas of Britain. And if you like documentaries, I would like to recommend to you a few documentaries, mostly featuring a very well-known actor, Sir Tony Robinson. If you ever watched Blackadder, the comedy series with Rowan Atkinson and Tony Robinson, they play the main roles there. And besides being an actor, Tony Robinson is a great enthusiast of cross-country walking and archaeology and British history, and he hosted a lot of interesting programs. In one of the programs, he actually walked along Wainwright's coast-to-coast walk, so from the Lake District to the coast of Yorkshire, visiting interesting sites, talking to people, presenting some local businesses and country activities. Another very interesting documentary that he hosted was called Britain's Ancient Tracks. So this is a map with some of those tracks, Watling Street, which was a Roman way, or Icknield Way from East Anglia to central England. He walked in Kent, he walked in Wiltshire, visiting all the prehistoric monuments, and this is something really very, very interesting. This is something I would love to do, really. I love walking and I love national parks. I've been using some of my local national parks around Poznan recently, but this is something I would really like to go. Watch this and be inspired. And the last slide I would like to show you is the slide about the Duke of Edinburgh's award. And you have three levels of it: the bronze, the silver, and the gold award. And this is one of the kind of social programs sponsored or headed by the Duke of Edinburgh. So Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II. This is aimed at young people. Apparently it gives some additional points if you want to go to the university. And this is what you need to do. This is a guide of completing this award. So as you can see, there are 5 things you need to do. Do some social service, develop some skills. You can actually look at this slide in close up and see all the requirements. Physical recreation. For the gold project, you need to actually spend a week living away from home and helping some local community. But one of the parts here, and the reason why I decided to include it in this week's class, is this adventurous journey. So plan a hike, plan some sort of cultural trip, very often involving the cross-country trails and the national parks. And this is something that, as you can see, has been promoted even by the royal family, and especially among young people, to make them more involved in some social work, and also to improve their health through physical activity. So that's it for this week, and next week we'll talk about Scotland. So thank you.